Hi, thanks for being here. You're listening to A Conversation with Jordan. That's me. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode. I finally put a post out on Instagram sharing that I spontaneously started this podcast, so there may be a few more listeners around this time. I still imagine it could be quite small though, but it's actually shocking me some of the people who are reaching out that are listening to the podcast, so maybe it's reaching more listeners than I think, but because I know I'm also putting this on YouTube, and also like the YouTube videos, it's so funny. I'm still not really putting any effort into the setup and what it looks like, and maybe I should start putting some effort in because I really am enjoying doing this podcast, and I really love to make things nice. Like I said, I'm gonna be a broken record here, but this podcast is just like my creative outlet that is definitely pushing against perfectionism, and it's just like something that I'm picking up spontaneously every single time and just going for it. So I actually only have an hour before I have to leave my house today, and I was like, you know what? I feel like talking and recording the podcast. So even less of a setup or preparation for today. And yeah, this is just enjoyable for me. So welcome to another episode on the podcast. And I'm excited to chat with you guys. You guys, like, it just means so much that you're here and taking the time to listen to literally just me. Like, that's what this podcast is so far, is just me. It's insight into me and my thoughts and my brain. So I appreciate you for thinking that that's entertaining. It means a lot, actually, because of course, like, we're all humans, and the fact that somebody wants to listen to you is obviously that is a sweet, what is the word? There was a good word that came to my head and it escaped me, but it is, I don't know, it's just a kindness on your part, I guess, for caring about me enough to listen to me. Alright, well, with that being said, I'm gonna just, like, dive into something that I could keep a secret, and if I keep it a secret, it would make I'd feel a lot better. It'd be a lot less vulnerable. But I'm like, I'm not gonna keep this a secret because I kind of just want to be like really honest about something. It's fascinating, so you'll see what I mean. Obviously, if you're listening to this like right when I put it out, then you'll know that the Northern Lights were quite a big deal over the last few days, because they showed up in America, like visibly, that for the first time, even all the way down south, which is pretty crazy. But me up here in Oregon, I think I got to see quite a bit of color. And I actually was in bed, and I forgot about them. Like, I had known about them earlier in the day, and then I went to bed, and I was so focused on something else that I was... Okay, here's another shameful admission, even though I haven't admitted the other one yet, but I was in bed on my computer working on, like, the finance tracker that I was building because I was having so much fun, and so I got so hyper-focused on that I totally forgot about the Northern Lights. And then I got a text, from my old roommate, Sierra, whose podcast I was just on. If you listened to that episode last week, I shared about that. And she's like, are you outside looking at this? Because she knows how much I love, photo and video work. And I was like, oh, no, are they out? And she's like, yeah. And, And so I ended up being like, okay, well, I'll get my butt up and get out there. And so I'm going to tell you, like, the actual experience of my time going to capture the Northern Lights. And you'll see what I mean by the vulnerability behind I could keep this part of myself a secret of these thoughts that I had while filming the Northern Lights, but I just kind of want to admit it and be vulnerable with you guys because I was frustrated with myself. So let me take you into the story first and then I'll get to that. But so I drive out to like random, I just was trying to find them, so I was just driving randomly knowing I needed to be like in a dark area. And I threw my camera into my car and I found a dirt road. Quite a few people parked along the like start of the dirt road, but I drove down further because I didn't want like to have people mess up a time lapse with their headlights, right? So I drove all the way down and then there were like power lines and I thought that the composition was kind of ugly. And so I was like, well, let me go see if I can find a better area before I sit and set up this like time lapse that's gonna obviously sit there for quite some time to capture something like this. And so I ended up leaving and I drove around and I was not finding a better situation. Everywhere else I went, there were a lot more opportunity for cars to drive by and headlights to really ruin the time lapse. So I was like, oh, you know what? I should probably go back to the original place because at least I know it's safe from any other light sources affecting my shot. So I kind of was already discouraged a little bit because I had wasted a lot of time trying to find a better place and ended up going back to the original place. And then I set up the time lapse. And I got it going and I was sitting in my car and it was late. So I had left my house at like 11:40 p.m. to start. And by the time I like finally set up the final time lapse, it was because I had set my camera down and taken some shorter time lapses. But time lapses, when you have your shutter open to like 13 seconds per photo, it takes a very long time to get like any decent length of time lapse, because think about that. You can multiply and do the math, but 13 seconds of an open shutter for one photo is going to take quite a bit of time to build up enough photos to get a lot of seconds in a time lapse. So I didn't describe that. Like I set up a time lapse and then I was like, no, I don't like this. And then I left. So by the time I set up my actual final time lapse of the one I was going to like really commit to, it was about 2 a.m. So you can tell how much time was wasted in my exploration. And yeah, but anyway, I get it set up and then, you can see on your phone, what the sky is doing, because to the naked eye, you can see some, white, clouds looking things like moving in the sky, but you don't really see the color, but your phone shows you what's going on. And I was sitting there for about 30 minutes and it was just like the same green waves, which were insanely beautiful. So now here's where I'm going to admit this like side of myself that I was so bothered by that night. And I was sitting there and I was praying to the Lord a lot about this because I'm just like, Lord, forgive me for my heart and my mindset right now. But I was sitting there and I was like, man, I don't even like the composition. Like, I feel like I should have explored more and tried harder to set up a more interesting composition. And then I was sitting there thinking like, man, it's just like these green waves only. And though it's insanely beautiful, it's not going to be the most exciting time lapse. And what I was regretting was like, if I had not explored and had just committed to setting up in that place in the first place, I would have gotten like the most dramatic colors because I kind of missed that time period of the dramatic colors. So you can understand like the discouragement that I felt of like my own choice to try to find something better and ended up going back to the same place and missing kind of the most vibrant part of the display. And so there's grace for that because like, of course, anyone would be a little bit disappointed in missing like kind of the best part and knowing that you had the opportunity and you, by your own choice, you missed it, So give myself grace for that a little bit. But I was just kind of like sitting there ashamed that I was having this mindset that I'm currently experiencing a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm sitting here kind of upset about the composition of the frame and the fact that like the sky's not doing as many cool things as would make a time lapse like really stand out. And I'm admitting this to you because like I said, I could keep that a secret within myself. No one has to know I was having thoughts like that. But I think there's actually like maybe a gift in admitting something like this publicly, because I don't think I'm alone in sometimes having those thoughts. And it's just kind of frustrating to have a heart position in which you're not really sitting in gratitude for like the insane beauty that's going on in front of me. Like I definitely felt the war like in my soul between like I had that gratitude in me a little bit where I was like, I cannot believe I'm experiencing this. This is amazing. This is incredible. And then I had that other fight where I'm like, oh, I'm a photographer and filmmaker and I want everything to look really good and I want to set up things, and you just kind of get pulled into this like mindset of discontentment when you're so used to creating really good things. Like most people out there are just amazed to see it, but as a creative, I'm like, of course I want to capture something to the best of my ability. Hence, do you see like maybe why there's even like some of the reason I'm recording this podcast to like beat some of that perfectionism out of me, right? Because obviously I like wrestle with these mindsets sometimes. So I hope me sharing that actually like if anything, I'm sure there's somebody else out there that is, one, encouraged that they might have related to feeling that way before, like related to me and experiencing those kind of more negative discontent thoughts, and kind of being ashamed of them, that maybe I can empathize with you there, that we've related, in and it probably looked like a very different situation, but like this could even go into things outside of creativity. Like maybe you're a new mother and you're like, wow, I thought this moment would be more special, but I'm feeling a lot of other things and stuff. Like those are like the deepest moments of probably like, ouch, that hurts. Why would I have thoughts like this? But I think those thoughts are just like, so I'm sharing this as like, maybe you can relate, but the other encouragement aside from that is, one, the answer to those types of thoughts is not shame. It really isn't, because shame's just going to take you into a deeper hole. And I've been really passionate for a long time of recognizing that we do have control over our thoughts. And I used to be so guilty for the initial thought that came to my mind. But in a sense, the initial thought is not really my fault. What I do with that initial thought is the key. That's the key thing. So I think there's probably psychologists that talk a lot about this, but like, I mean, that's the whole mental health area, is like, it's not the whole mental health area. I don't mean to speak so broadly. I'm not an expert on any of this. Please, people can sound like experts on podcasts, and I really want to just put that caveat in there, because I'm not trying to speak as if I'm an expert on anything. I'm just an expert on my own mind, right? Because I'm the only one living it. So I know what's happening there. And I know that I used to live most of my life feeling guilty about initial thoughts that I had, but going into like a Christian context, that's similar with temptation, right? Whenever you are tempted, I used to think the actual temptation was a sin. And temptation is not sin. Temptation, if you actually go into like scripture, I mean, Jesus was tempted. Jesus talks about every man being, or scripture, not Jesus, but talks about every man being tempted. And I just share this as an encouragement to say, like, those initial thoughts that you have, you don't need to feel guilty with that, but I really encourage you to work on the thoughts that follow it. Because really what I did in that moment, I really did pray, and I was like, Lord, please forgive my heart and my discontentment in this moment, because I'm currently experiencing one of the most magnificent and beautiful things in front of my face. And I've dreamed about experiencing the Northern Lights, and I hope I can go experience it again, somewhere where I can actually maybe see even more visibly with my eyes some of those rich colors. Like it's a really beautiful phenomenon. But and I took a lot of that to prayer and just said, forgive my heart, because I don't want that heart posture. And I want to live life with a lot more gratitude. But I'm actually proud of myself for having a little bit more grace for myself more than ever in my life, to sit there and be like, it's okay that I was disappointed at the same time for not getting like, of course, this was such a cool opportunity and I could have done something really cool with it, and I still did something really cool with it, but it wasn't quite as good as I could have done, and that's just fine. Like, it is what it is. I got to experience something really amazing. So, and I will say, I left the night with a gigantic feeling, extremely blessed. So, I actually posted the little time lapse that I got on Instagram. So if you're listening to this podcast aside from Instagram, you can go watch it. But maybe on the YouTube video, on the YouTube podcast, I'll put the time lapse over my face right now, so that you can watch it. But something that was really cool was I had the time lapse running for about like 30 minutes. And just those green waves, like I said, were going through the sky, and I was sitting a little bit in that discontentment, and I was just praying. And I literally walked out to the camera, and on my walk, all of a sudden I look up and I see like a really sharp pink line, or it's not pink, it wasn't pink to my eyes, but like really sharp white line in front of my eyes, and I was like, whoa. And then the camera, as it's taking pictures, sometimes it shows you a little preview for like a millisecond before it opens the shutter to take the new photo, and I saw some pink there, and I was like, wait a second. So then I put my phone up, And all of a sudden I could see just like this burst of color coming into the picture, and it was in the frame of the camera. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to go to bed yet. I'm going to be patient. And I went back to my car and I waited for like another 30 minutes, and I was getting so tired. So it was like 3 a.m. at this point. And so if you just saw that time lapse, maybe I'll repeat it again. You can now see that out of nowhere, after those green waves were rolling through for quite some time, because that was, a half hour to 40 minutes on my end, all of a sudden a burst of color just comes into the picture. And I was like, man, it was just cool to like wrestle in my heart with like this discontentment of like, oh, it's not good enough, which is just such a shame to say. And I'm saying shame using that lightly because I just told you not to be ashamed of those thoughts, but I mean, they were there. And it really is ridiculous. It's a dumb thought because it is insanely beautiful regardless of the pop of color. But that pop of color at the end was like such a blessing to experience. It was so dang cool. And I just thank the Lord for that little blessing on top of my discontentment. So, okay, wow. Well, I talked about that a lot. I don't know. I hope I articulated myself in a way that you understood, that I just wanted to bring light to the fact that it's really annoying sometimes to have like those parts of yourself that are less than desirable, but they're real, and it's the reality of life, and we all have them. We all are discontent in times where like contentment would be and gratitude would be a much better perspective and answer. And so in every area of my life, I'm always consistently trying to shift into a gracious perspective, because like there's so many things that can be difficult, but like you can always be grateful for some aspect of it. And obviously you can tell in my podcast, this podcast I keep ending with gratitude, because that's something that, yeah, I want to be that old lady, and Lord willing, if I get to live until I'm like 80 years old or longer, like 90 years old, what if I get to hit 100? I want to be that, that really kind and joyful old lady. You know how you meet, like, I don't mean to stereotype or generalize, but I feel like you can meet a lot of elderly that are either really bitter, and really just like angry and upset, and or those that are like so joyful and have such a smile and such like a lightheartedness about life. And I'm a pretty serious person sometimes, so I just like have always desired that. Like I would not let my seriousness and how much I think and ever lead me to a place where I'm older and not that joyful presence. I want to be that joyful presence. I want to be it now, but I want to continue to like develop that gratitude within my heart every single moment and day and year, and every season, regardless of how hard or good it is, to just have that heart posture of gratitude, even when those tempting thoughts come up to be discontent. So that's kind of the heart behind why I shared any of this. But but with all that being said, I mean, I got to go capture the Northern Lights, and that was fun. I was very sleep deprived. I got 3 hours of sleep that night, 4 hours of sleep maybe, and then the very next night it was supposed to happen again, and I went out to go to try capture more of it, and they didn't really show up, so I was up until like 1 a.m. But yeah, I haven't written my newsletter that's supposed to come out in a few days. I have to write that tomorrow. In 2 days, it comes out in 2 days. But something I think I'm going to write in it, so there may be repetition, but now you can hear, if you listen to my newsletter first and now you're listening to this podcast, there may be repeated things here. But one other thing I wanted to share today is I have known this about myself, but I have been reminded about this about myself. I get so much joy from learning and challenging myself to learn something new. Like, if I'm ever feeling dry, I just need to remind myself, go challenge yourself, Jordan, and go learn something new. So it's so fascinating. I needed to look at my finances a lot closer this year, and I've already had a way to track my finances, but there were things that I wanted to make a little bit better about it. So, and just like, it was just kind of like a random exploration. I started to just try to improve my original finance tracker I had built for myself inside of Notion. And then I started to like get really into the depths of like, oh, maybe I can like automate this process. Can I figure out how to do that? And anyway, let me just do like long story short. I ended up building this like really in-depth finance tracker and learning how to like Notion has its own like coding formula, like language. It's called Notion 2.0 and formulas, right? And it's similar to, I think, a mixture of JavaScript and other things, like if you know any coding language. I never learned any of that. I did take one class in my life where I learned a little bit of CSS and HTML. So if you know what any of that means, I have like the tiniest bit of coding experience in my life. So I have like just like I said, it's a very minimal knowledge idea of how to code things. But I was like, well, I want to build these I want to automate these processes of tracking like the totals of my finances and in my personal expenses and my business expenses and my income, and seeing how many fees are getting taken out and what my profit and loss is. And I used to do that all very, very manually, but I challenged myself to figure out how to automate the process. And then I also wanted to see like all of my different spending categories, like how much I was spending per month on each category, so I could see how my money was being shifted within my utilities and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, let's see if I can build this. And I just started building it and teaching myself, and oh my gosh, I was racking my brain, and I was like, how the heck do I write the formula to make that happen? And I can get too much in depth about this and you may not care. The reason I'm sharing it on this podcast is I cannot tell you the joy that I felt behind building that. Like, I don't even get it. Like, I had like butterflies in my stomach of the fact that I was figuring it out. It just felt like such a sense of accomplishment to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know how to code this stuff or even how to write these formulas. And with enough Google searches to see something like actually work out in the end is like one of the best feelings ever. So anyway, I don't know if you're like me, but when I encourage people, it's often from like, I'm encouraging them out of something that works for me, but so it may not work for you, but something that really works for me within the creative process. And I consider that creativity. I'm working with numbers and building a finance tracker, but in a sense it's creativity because it's a way to like put a system together. And I don't know, in my mind, it's a very analytical version of creativity. And I just had a blast learning something new. So like what I'm saying is my encouragement is to, if you're feeling dry, just like go challenge yourself in something and see if you can make it happen. And that feeling of accomplishment is often the thing that like motivates you to continue working. We know this with psychology and like testing and experiments, like people and animals even, and I'm not going to go into the ethics of all that, but obviously respond to reward. We respond to reward very well. And the internal reward of challenging yourself and seeing yourself figure it out is such a, I don't know, it's something that I really enjoy in my life, at least. So yeah, I built up this finance tracker and then I posted it on Instagram, and I was like, wow, this could actually maybe be beneficial for other people because I put hours into this thing. Like, and I'm like, I think actually I just built a good system here and I actually want to share it with others. And I put the feeler out there to see if anyone would be interested, and there were so many people interested, which was another thing that like really encouraged me to be like, wow, something that I was just doing for myself that brought me deep joy can now actually help other people. So I don't know when I'll have it officially done. It'd be really cool if I have it done. Like, if I have it done, I'll put it in the link in this podcast in the show notes. Because I'm really close to getting it done. What I'm doing now, because there was so much interest, is I'm writing an entire instruction manual, and we'll probably record videos for it so that people could make like customize it for themselves. Because I like try to make it. I made it for me, of course, but I feel like most people could fit their lives into the system that I built, but there may be some like categories and spending categories that they'd want to change, or that you'd want to change if you're interested in this finance tracker. And so I'm writing an instruction manual for that. But anyway, I am so sorry if you were totally not interested in any of that, but I hope you can hear my joy, because and just be joyful with me that I experienced like so much joy in that. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm finally, like, I've been so honest on this podcast, and I feel like I'm finally coming out of my rut a little bit of like just feeling like I was expressing so often that I was having such a hard time, and I still am. I'm gonna say I'm tired of doing things alone, and that's gonna, I think, be my reality for a little while. I want to share my life with more people, but I'm getting to do that in lots of different ways. I just think like there's a part of me that's like I would love to build, if anything, maybe a team into my business so that I can like share these moments with like teammates within business, um but at the same time I'm not at a place where I could really value that person like financially. That's why I never do it. Anyway, this is like not stuff I should probably like, I feel like this is stuff you share at a coffee shop with a friend, not on my podcast. But it's just where my heart's at. So let's see if I can, that was just like so many updates on me. Let's see if I can think of anything else to talk about real quick, and then I'll get going because I have to get going, but oh, I'm lost. I don't know what to talk about. Well, let me then just end with an encouragement like I always do. I'll come up with a thing to be grateful for. I love the unplanned nature of this. I hope you feel like you are sitting with a friend and like across from me at a coffee shop, and feeling like seeing me stumble as I'm trying to think about something, and I hope you feel like personally invited into like the rawness and the realness of life with me, because that is truly who I am throughout all things. I can't help but be just genuine in a process. It's the only way I know how to live life. I am a terrible actor, I think, because I can't act anything other than what is me. Okay, well, tangent again. Okay, here's my encouragement as I talk about being alone. I was talking about like being alone in my like everyday moments. That's where I mean lonely, but in the other side of encouragement and things that I've been doing, I think very well, or trying to do well, is I've been putting myself out there in so many different ways, trying to meet so many different new people. And Emily, if you listen to this, I was blessed by I met a new random creative friend in my area, and we worked at a coffee shop across from each other today. And we do not know each other well. She had listened to my podcast, and we met up at a social thing that was a group thing, and found out we were both creatives, and ended up wanting to just work together at a coffee shop. And I really just think there's so much beauty in that process of putting yourself out there to be uncomfortable and meet a lot of new people. And like, I honestly, it might have been more comfortable for me to stay home and do more things, but I thought the value of getting more people into my life was way more important. And so I just know that the culture nowadays, like a lot of people are feeling a lot really lonely. So my encouragement to you this week is to put yourself out there in new ways and meet new people, and be willing to extend yourself even if you are more introverted and would rather hang out alone. Like, I think you would rather not be lonely though. So like, do something to be around people and new people. And this, I'm saying my encouragement to you, I might only be speaking to one person. You that I'm talking to may not need this at all. You might be great at this. But there's someone out there that they just needed to hear that this week. That, yeah, I will get myself out and put myself out there regardless of the uncomfortability, to meet some new people in new ways. And that could be going to a new hobby and trying something new. I just encourage you to do that, because the way I made that connection was putting myself out there and doing something new that I've never done before. That's how the original connection was formed. And then we got to meet on a common bond, right? And work with one another across from each other in a coffee shop. So I didn't plan on talking about this. So if you're listening to this, Emily, I really appreciated your invite as well to hang out with you at the coffee shop. And I look forward to continuing friendship. But yeah, cool. I hope that as we've looked at the sky and the northern lights, as a globe together, that the gratitude I can leave you with today is maybe spending a night to truly look at the stars, to look at the sky and realize, like, dang, it is so vast and big out there, and that is really, really cool, and that we are like the tiniest, 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 tiniest piece of that universe, and yet I know that you may not believe in the Lord, but I do, and I believe that you are so intimately loved and valued by the Lord who created such a magnificent universe and world like that. And the fact that He intimately cares about each and every one of us, my goodness, I cannot be more grateful to live under that kind of love. I just don't get it in the best way. That the Lord may know the numbers of hair on my head and have created me when there's something as magnificent and beautiful as the universe already, and the earth and the northern lights and the sun, and yet He views His creation as His people as very good. He created them and said, "This is very good." So that is what I'm grateful for today, to be so deeply loved by the Creator of the universe. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to experience those northern lights. So, all right. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you are doing well today, and I hope that if you're not doing well, that you find a moment of gratitude and you go love somebody regardless. And I hope that your day can improve. I really care for you. And I'm with you, and I'm sorry if your day is not going as good as you want it to. So, all right. Love you guys. If you listen to my last podcast or my previous podcast, you know that I often find that phrase a little bit weird. But as a sister and friend, I really do care and love you, even though I may not know you. All right. See you next week or whenever I have another podcast come out. Bye, guys.